What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Dynasty Dummies, your home for the latest and greatest in college football news and action. We're your hosts, Hunter and Tony, and we're going to jump right into this week's top storylines, of course, being the coach firings that have happened this year, starting with Maryland firing Mike Locksley.
Honestly, for me, this one came as a more of a shock. I thought Maryland was doing pretty good, relatively, especially the start of the season. You know, they were on fire. They were ranked by us. I know they had a really good schedule, and then they came up against Washington and lost. And like you had predicted, it derailed one of the two team seasons, and it was Maryland, unfortunately. But I still find it a little bit of a shock, seeing as how good they were doing with a true freshman at quarterback.
I agree. I really did not see that one coming. When I said that their season would get derailed, I did not mean or predict the coach firing. Locksley had been with Maryland, had success, and really understood the environment and culture he was around. And obviously they've stumbled now this year. Did not expect him to get fired, though. Maryland, again, just going to go through another cycle with coaching here, just like Auburn's going to be doing with Hugh Freeze, who was probably the bigger name that was let go after going 15-19 in his 3 years at Auburn.
This one was kind of the when is it going to happen sort of thing. That his name has been plastered all over the the coach firings for the last, you could probably say, 2 years. There was a lot of expectations when he was brought in, and it just never seemed to amount to any of those. I did see a video, funny enough, I believe, of his daughter saying that they were promised 4 years, and somebody had replied, "Well, we were promised winning football." So, yeah, so you can never take anything for granted. I mean, when you're throwing out these results that they've been getting the past 3 years, you're not going to get to much, especially in a program like Auburn where the expectations are high. So this is definitely a program to watch out for when in the offseason and who's going to get that job.
Just another SEC opening from this league where they just can't seem to win enough games to keep their coaches. So it'll be interesting to see how that one falls. Freeze, I never thought was a great culture fit with Auburn coming over from Liberty. Maybe it was the culture, maybe it was the coaching, maybe it was this, maybe it was that. Ultimately, it ends after 15 wins and 19 losses, and Auburn going to be looking for another coach. However, few coaches are locked up for the immediate future now on the flip side of things, with SMU's Rhett Lashley agreeing to a 2-year extension where he's gone 35-15 over the last 4 years, including that playoff berth last year in the first 12-team playoff. I think this is a great extension for SMU. They get their guy who's been winning with them, and they've had success. They're 6-3 this year, just knocked off Miami. So it looks like he's going to be able to maintain that culture that he's built over there in Dallas.
I'm with you in this one. I think it's a great extension for SMU in a program where they have taken that step from a G5 to the P4, and they have taken it by storm. Honestly, I mean they've come in and they've done a lot better than I think a lot of people would have thought, and especially this year there was some high expectations because of what they did last year in making the playoff. And, they might fall a little short this year, but I still think it's been pretty successful being their second season in the ACC. So I think this is a great extension for them. And another extension that I thought is pretty good as well, of course, is Matt Rule getting a 2-year extension with Nebraska, of course, fighting off the Penn State allegations here, where it was almost written in the stars that, of course, he was going to somehow end up at Penn State. But he's staying in with the Cornhuskers, even though 18-16 over the last 3 years, not doing too great. But I think this past year and this season, there has been some improvement. And I think it's only going to get better for him. And I think Nebraska landed themselves a good extension here.
See, I don't know if I fully agree with it being a good extension. I do like me some Matt Rule. I think he's a good coach. But he has not had the results to match my likingness towards him. I don't think 18 and 16 over 3 years is good enough, quite frankly, for another 2-year extension. Personally, if I was Nebraska, I might have let Penn State pay him that big money, because now you're paying him that money, and who knows if Matt Rule's actually going to get the job done. I understand in today's climate, and specifically this coaching carousel, though, you want to lock up your guy before you lose your guy. So I don't think it's a bad one. I'm just not sold on Matt Rule and Nebraska's marriage quite yet. This year they are taking a lot of right steps. Dylan Raiola has now been ruled out for the rest of the year with a broken leg. So we'll see how he finishes this season, but it's highly likely that he's going to be sitting right around or below 500 through 3 years at Nebraska. So hopefully he can keep the turn going and get them all the way back.
It'll one of those things again. Time will tell, but we'll find out. I mean, he's proven himself to be a pretty decent coach, so we'll have to see if he can get it done. But another official, I guess, hire / extension, whatever you want to call it, is Kent State officially hiring their interim head coach Mark Carney as their head coach. So that's one less opening that didn't get Kent State, but. He's 3-5 this year so far, but I think, to lock up your head coach in any sort of means is always a good thing, because there's no questions going in to the offseason. They know who they're running with, and, they can start building around him.
I agree. I think this is a good hire for Kent State. He gets their first FBS wins in over 2 years, which is great, and to do it from the interim basis. The players have really responded to him, from what I've seen in reports and local beat writers, that the team has really rallied around him and supported this hire. So I think when you have the team behind your back in a situation like this with Kent State, who's historically been one of, if not the worst team at this level, you go all in with the guy that is sending the right culture and helps you build that foundation for the future.
Absolutely. I'm with you there. If the players are responding well to an interim, it usually turns into the title of head coach. So it's something you always want to build around, because college football is so much important about that culture around the team, especially with how players are now in and out all the time. Having that established culture can really help a team build upon themselves and just become better and better. But jumping right into our, of course, rankings, the most important thing, especially with this week being the first official playoff rankings week with the bracket coming out. Of course, going to go over our criteria like always. That head-to-head is important. Weekly results matter. And the controversy this week is weekly results. All of them are equal, and I will preach it. I think they are all equal. I don't think that week one matters any less just because it's week one. So we'll get into that a little later. No hypotheticals whatsoever, of course. Death to hypotheticals. Team vibes, how they're playing, how they're performing, what they're doing, whatnot. And then, of course, we're going to start mentioning it now that we're into the bracket side, that people or teams will not be punished for losing conference championship games. We think that is unfair, because you played well and you earned that extra game. Yeah. Just because you
shouldn't be punished for playing so well you get another game.
Exactly. So that's our philosophy on it, is if you are good enough to get into that conference championship game, you should not be dropped 5 slots for losing. You
shouldn't be rewarding a team who wasn't.
Game.
Exactly. You shouldn't be rewarding a team who wasn't good enough to make their conference championship game by having a bye week while another team gets to play football because they were good enough. I don't care if it's like, well, the third best team in the SEC is better than the second best team in the ACC. No, they're not. They didn't make their conference title game. This isn't about who has more blue chips. It is about who wins games and who is most deserving. And just because you have recruits, which in itself has a biased ranking, doesn't mean you are the most deserving team. Wins and losses matter. The conferences matter. So you get rewarded as such for that.
Absolutely. And again, AP style voting with 5 total people. that we all do our individual ballots. This week we do have all 5 submitted in so that our rankings will be 100% accurate in this one. So without further ado, we'll jump right in. You can go ahead and start off with yours.
Thanks. The top 4 for me remains the same: Indiana, Ohio State, A&M, and BYU. I do have everyone else just kind of sliding up after the Georgia Tech upset loss to NC State. So Oregon, Bama, Georgia, UVA, and Louisville all slide up, while I have Tech dropping all the way down to 12. I didn't punish them anymore because that is the same loss as UVA had earlier in the season, and as Tony mentioned, doesn't matter when, us two specifically do believe this, doesn't matter when the game was played during the course of the season, it equals and values just the same. So I do have Georgia Tech sliding down to 12, UVA at 8. Could argue Georgia Tech could be higher or lower. That's where they fit for me. And then Texas Tech jumps back into the top 10 here. I think that I might have punished them a little bit too hard after their loss. And then Ole Miss rounds out that top 12. Utah makes that most radical jump for me, jumping from unranked to number 13 after their big-time win against Cincinnati. Utah was a team that, a lot of people had talked about should have been ranked with only 5 voters. There's only so many votes to go around. They weren't by us or by me personally. I do think they're really good, though, so I rewarded them for that, up to 13. And then JMU is my highest-ranked group of 5 team at number 14. Texas enters my rankings after their big-time win as well, up to number 15. And then Iowa takes a huge jump. San Diego State, Memphis, USF are all, and North Texas all are group of 5 teams I have ranked. Cincinnati, Miami, and Vandy all dropped a considerable amount after their losses. Head-to-head still really matters to me, though, so Miami is still above Notre Dame. So Notre Dame dropped despite not losing. They didn't play that well against Boston College. So they stay at 20, or they move down to 21. Miami, because that head-to-head, stays ahead of Notre Dame. Maybe argue I didn't punish Cincy hard enough, but I had them all the way in at number 11, and they lost to a team I now have at number 13. So I'm going to leave them there. I think they're still deserving of that top 25 ranking.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, the more and more I looked at my rankings after I submitted them, I was like, did I really want? I think I might have punished Cincinnati a little too hard, but it's too late now, so they have every chance to again put themselves right back into the mix, like always. But I'm jumping into mine here. I'm kind of with you here, where I had. My top 8 is relatively the same. Everyone kind of just moves up a slot because of that Georgia Tech loss. Again, I'm with you in the sense of not going to kill them too hard for it because, again, UVA lost to that same NC State team, and results are all equal. Texas Tech gets a big boost. I'm with you in the sense of we might have punished them a little too harshly. They are rocking with their backup quarterback for the rest of the season. So I think it's only going to get probably a little better for them. I think they'll start to get in a better flow of things and look a little better, in my opinion. But I gave them a little big boost here. I will say,
quick correction, they have their starting quarterback, Texas Tech, that is. It's their backup who's out for the whole year.
My
Yeah, no.
Switch them around.
Yeah,
sorry.
Yes,
I'm with you.
Well, the thing is, Will Hammond had started the last several games because Brett Morton was
Yes,
out.
that's what it was. Yeah, I was.
Yes.
Yeah, I was switching the two by accident.
Not to call you out, but had to.
I understand.
Sure
understand.
Know.
I was. Yeah, I mixed it up myself there. I was.
We can be
Hammond
dummies
had been
at
starting
times.
so much. That's the point of the name, right? But yeah, so I think they'll get back to their top offensive ways. UVA, of course, for me, rounding out the top 10 with Louisville right behind them. I dropped Georgia Tech to 12 as well, and then I also had Utah kind of RKO out of nowhere and jump up to 13 as well. I think they are a great team. They were just outside of the top 25. And kind of manhandling Cincinnati there. really establish themselves that they are still very much a good team and still in contention for the Big 12, especially with a big game coming up that we'll go over. I'm with you in the same sense, JMU being my highest ranked G5 at 14, with San Diego State right behind them, and then Memphis as well. I got kind of a little group of 5 clump right there in the middle that could very much interchange by 1 slot, 2 slots, depending on how good they win or if they lose and stuff. So it could very much interchange those 3 just by 1 slot. Texas jumping in, as much as I hate to rank them, and it's funny because I had sent a text in our group chat earlier last week, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, saying that I was not going to rank Texas this season, but it is getting hard not to, and I couldn't just be a pure hater. I tried to be as as neutral and unbiased as possible, so I had to throw them in there at 17. They did get a good win against, I think, a good Vandy team, so I had to give them their flowers. With that, of course, Oklahoma being right behind them. Miami dropping down to 19 for me. That means Notre Dame one below them with that head-to-head at 20. Vandy dropping to 21, and then I had USC, North Texas, and Iowa jump in to round out my top 25.
I think there's a lot of similarities here with where we had, obviously, Utah jumping up to 13. Texas entered the rankings. I think we're really starting to see a more solidified thought on which teams really are good. Obviously, there is still a lot of discrepancies here with individual ballots, but some of the teams that are just on the outside looking in for me are Oklahoma, who you could argue should be ranked, but they're not by me, so that's the world we live in. I also have Pitt, Washington, Michigan, TCU, and Houston all on the outsides looking in, and a little asterisk next to SMU. If they can make some noise, they can still win the ACC, which means they can still make the college football playoff. As I mentioned, I had Utah, Texas, and North Texas all join. They replaced Navy, Houston, and Tulane, who I know you're upset about. I know Tulane, rough game that we'll jump into here shortly. But Group of 5, that last playoff bid is starting to get really interesting, not just from our rankings, but obviously from the college football playoff, which we'll talk about here soon.
Yeah, it's getting very interesting, especially in the G5 aspect where there's so many just close-knit teams. For me, my teams that are just out, basically the same, except I have Cincinnati just on the outside, Houston. I still have Tulane just on the outside. They still very much can make some noise. It's really going to be dependent on this upcoming game that we'll go into against a very good Memphis team. I don't think that one loss is going to it could define their season, but it could also, be that turning point of, are they still a legit team? Are they just going to shit the bed, basically, and just fold and roll over and just call it quits with, of course, all the noise around Sumrall possibly being on the out. So we'll have to see how that goes. And then I had Pitt, Michigan, and Washington as well, as teams looking just on the outside. Of course, like I said, Utah, Texas, USC, North Texas, and Iowa joining in, meaning that, of course, Cincinnati, Tulane, Tennessee finally dropping out. Houston and Navy, unfortunately, being the team that we all were hoping they weren't in their first real test and not doing too well, but they still have a chance. But they're on the out. They had to get dropped out, and they could very much find their way back in if they can somehow, possibly brew up a little upset.
They got some big games on their schedule that could mean big time movement in the rankings for them.
Absolutely, there's so much at stake for them, I think so.
The American and that last playoff spot as a whole are really interesting. The Americans so tight with Tulane, Navy, North Texas, and USF, and of course Memphis. Any one of those teams could still win it. Any one of those teams could play the villain for the conference and prevent them from getting that last spot. So it'll be really interesting to see. But I think, Tony, without further ado, it's time to reveal the Dynasty Dummies playoff bracket.
Yep, of course. With it being playoff time, we now have our very own bracket where we will show our rankings from 1 to 25, and then we will show you how the bracket would look on our end of things compared to the playoff committees. So with ours, we have decided as a whole that our one seed staying the same with Indiana getting that bye, Ohio State getting the bye, Texas A&M receiving the bye, and then Oregon receiving the bye at 4. So those are pretty massive in today's day and age, especially since now it is no longer conference champions getting the bye. It's just seeding as a whole. So you could have one conference champion possibly getting a bye with 3 others just being second place in their conference. So it's definitely gonna stir up some controversy come once we get the final rankings and get the bracket of who's getting the bye, and is winning your conference enough to get that bye. For some of them possibly not, especially our our Big 12 and ACC teams here, where they are very much disrespected still, and they always will be probably. So in our bracket, of course, our 8 and 9 matchup being Ole Miss against UVA, with UVA being the ACC conference champion. And then our 5-12 matchup will be BYU being the Big 12 champion, and then our G5 being JMU, who is 13. So they would be the 12 seed for us and being the G5 champ. And then our 7-10 matchup will be Georgia playing Texas Tech, while our 6-11 matchup will be Alabama hosting Louisville.
I think it's interesting to look right off the bat. Also important to note, no, there's no G5 spot. G5 is a made-up term by us, the people. That JMU is simply the 5th highest ranked champion. They are ranked 13th, but are the 12 seed, meaning that, as you can see with our rankings here, number 12, Georgia Tech, would be the first team out, as JMU would get the nod in ahead of them as the 5th highest ranked champion. So that's a really important distinction to notice here. And I think it brings up a good question of our own personal friend group bias here is the group of 5, remember, made up term, getting a little bit too much love from us, with JMU being up at 13. We have Memphis, San Diego State, and then USF all here. Getting a lot of love from the group of 5, and the people have been asking if our bias is playing a little bit too much. JMU, even as a JMU fan, to me, feels just a little too high. Even in my personal rankings, I don't feel good about ranking them that high, but that's just the way the cookie has crumbled, so...
I'm with you. The more and more I looked at it, especially every single person in our group this week said that this was the hardest thing we've ever done. We got through to, you could probably say our top 9, maybe 10 was almost, written in itself. And then everything after that was like, oh, what do we do? And it was rough. I mean, I put off doing my rankings for so long because I was just like, I don't know. It's going to be rough. Like, it's going to be so hard to rank some of these teams, and where am I going to rank them? And I'm with you in the sense that a G5 could possibly be getting a little too much love. But at the same time, I don't think that I want to hold them to a lower standard because they're quote-unquote G5. I still think they're very much good football teams. If they weren't, I wouldn't rank them. Simple as that. And I think we have seen from most of the G5, if not all the G5 teams that we have ranked, that they are legit. The only one you could probably call into question is possibly San Diego State, but they have a good enough record to where I think they deserve a number next to their name. But we've seen from these other G5 teams that they have proved themselves. I mean, JMU was a very close-knit game against a very good Louisville team, who we all know is a very good Louisville team. And, you get Memphis, who beat USF, who beat Florida, and then you have,
Who beat
and you
Texas.
look at it, and we'll get into it who beat Texas, and who is now ranked pretty highly according to the committee. So it's like there's a whole lot of things that are interchanging with each other that it's like it makes sense for the most part. So I think we're we're giving them their flowers. Some of it may be a little bias of their flowers, but I think they are getting their flowers that they deserve, and maybe a little extra on top just because we like to push the G5 agenda just a little bit.
Just a touch, but that's okay. I think that these rankings do showcase some discrepancies between our individual pollers where not all of us value that head-to-head throughout the season as much. Tony and I obviously talked about it at the start of this. We both value wins and losses from any point in the season the same as any other point. So week 1 matters the same thing as week 11. And that is especially true with a great example being Notre Dame and Miami, where obviously you can see in our rankings here that Miami is down at 22 while Notre Dame's up at 16, despite Miami having that head-to-head victory. Obviously, you saw in our own personal rankings that they were side-by-side for Tony and I. Miami just one spot ahead. Clearly, that is not the same feeling for the entire group, where some people do feel that obviously there's a recent wins matter more than previous losses. So Notre Dame got a big nod in some people's polls over Miami. Personally, I disagree with this, Cody, that the win week 1 matters for Miami just as much as it does, the loss for Notre Dame now. Miami should be rewarded for beating this team head-to-head, and I don't understand. If this was a power ranking, then maybe, yeah, you can put Notre Dame ahead, because it doesn't matter who you've won or lost to. But in a top 25 ranking, I think head-to-head wins and losses do matter. So I do not like seeing Miami so far below Notre Dame in our rankings.
And just a note, me and you were the only ones that put Miami over Notre Dame. The other three have Notre Dame over Miami by quite a bit, seeing as Cody has Notre Dame at 16, Will has them at 17, and Edwin does as well. And, Cody's got Notre Dame at 25, just barely in, and Edwin's got them at 24, Will's got them at 20. So we were the only ones that, made it relatively close at all. But I agree with you in the sense that if it was power rankings, it's completely different. That's, how you're playing at the moment. But, just because it was a week 1 loss doesn't mean it was any worse or better than it would have been if it was now. Like
you have to be rewarded for winning games.
With the weekly results, with the weekly results, are the stakes higher later in the season? Absolutely. You could say that every single week. But it doesn't mean that game's any less. We've gotten to the point in college football as a whole, every single game matters no matter what. And this is in the sense of how the playoff is now, where if you're in a Power 4 conference and you lose 2 games, you're kind of on the outside looking in. So that week 1 game should matter absolutely just as much, as a week 10 game, week 11 game. I mean, if Alabama goes and loses another game, they could absolutely, kind of falter out here and be on the outside looking in because of that week 1 loss to a bad Florida State team now, where, they're going to look at it and be like, how did we lose this game? And most people do look at it and be like, how did this Alabama team lose that game when, they got slapped around by Florida State that first week. So everyone was like, what happened? Because, Florida State went like this, and now all of a sudden they're straight down and just bad again. And Alabama did the exact opposite, where they just they started down and went straight back up, and they have not looked back since. So it just goes to show that these early games, they should matter just as much, because like I've been saying, if you lose that week 1 or that week 2, and it could just come back to bite you in the butt later in the season. I mean, Notre Dame, we've been saying for a while now that they're riding off of their brand. I mean, they have 2 quality lessons in Miami and Texas A&M, but for a team like them where they drop one more, they'll probably be out. I mean, a 3-loss Notre Dame should not be getting in.
They won't get
Could
in.
They be outside looking in? Would they be outside looking in? Possibly, because they're Notre Dame. That brand does bring a lot, especially with TV ratings being a big thing now. But it's one of those things where I think me and you are 100% in agreement here, where a week one game matters just as much as the last week of the season because it absolutely could play a part in where you fall in these rankings.
I 100% agree. You got to value everything the same, or just nothing matters in my opinion. So it's going to be an interesting stretch down for the dummies here on how we rank teams. There's going to be a lot of debate as these teams start to face each other. Obviously, BYU and Texas Tech is a big matchup that's going to be happening this week, and we'll talk about it shortly. But there's a lot to be said with where these teams are going to end up falling. But the big news is that this is the first week with the official college football playoff bracket and poll selected by the committee. So, Tony, how about you go ahead and show us what we got from here, and we'll take a look at the committee's first rankings of the season and seeing where these teams lie. Starting off, they have Ohio State at 1, Indiana 2, Texas A&M 3, and Bama at 4 with those byes. And then we got Memphis facing off against Georgia, Oregon heading to Texas Tech, Virginia heading to Ole Miss, and Notre Dame heading to BYU in the first round. I think the biggest thing to note from us is that, yes, Memphis is their last ranked champion in this bracket, and they are not even in the committee's top 25.
It's you say last ranked champion, and they're not even ranked. It's probably a big talking point, if not one of the biggest, and in my opinion, the biggest talking point of this is throughout their top 25, there's no G5. They didn't sniff the top 25. Mm-mm. It seems like, and it seems like it's going to be, possibly late into the season before we even see a G5 sneak into this top 25. So I don't know what it is with the committee this year, if it's just because there's no Boise State of last year where it was like a very clear-cut G5. But, I think that's the beauty of it, is that it could change every single week instead of it's like, oh, it's guaranteed to be Boise State because, they're playing good, they got to eat, blah, blah, whatever. Like, I think that's the best part about it, is that Memphis slot could change every single week. And I think that's the best part about it. Just like any other slot on there could change. The committee 100% goes by, I know we hark on it, it's not a G5 slot, but the committee absolutely does look at it like that. In my opinion, where it's a G5 slot. If they happen to rank higher than a P4, then they'll get in on that slide. And especially with how last season went with Boise, where they ended up getting that bye. But it doesn't seem like we're going to get anything like that this year, purely because there's no clear cut, and with how the seeding has now changed, where a conference championship doesn't guarantee you a bye.
I think the committee is learning from what they perceive as a mistake last year of they don't want to rank these group of 5 teams high, because last year you could have argued it was fairly close that the ACC champion didn't make the tournament. Clemson was the lowest ranked champion, and they were rated 16th in the country after they won the ACC. Boise State was in the top 12. They didn't make it because of that. They were a top 12 team in the committee's eyes. They were a lock to make it regardless of conference championship status. I don't think they want to run the risk of 2 group of 5 teams getting in ahead of one of the Power 4 conference champions. So in order to do that, you just don't rank any of them that high. And Memphis being here, not even ranked, but making the tournament, is just going to heighten conversations people want to have around there shouldn't be a group 5 or top 5 champion playoff spot, and that the G5 should just have their own tournament, their own rules, own everything, separate from these power, quote unquote, power teams. And they're going to keep pushing us further and further down by just not ranking us, because I do think Memphis should be ranked. I do think there should be at least 1, if not 2, group of 5 teams worthy of being ranked by the committee here. But they can't run the risk of these teams continually climbing up their rankings if they rank them this early, because then you have the situation of, well, they're 2 highest ranked champs, and they are not going to allow that to happen. It will be the day hell freezes over when 2 Group of 5 champions get in, and we're closer to the era where they're just going to reformat the rules and none of them get in.
It's I'm with you there. It's very much trending in the direction of they're going to find a way to just completely cut out G5 altogether, where nobody nobody wants to see it, they don't deserve it, sort of thing, where just give them their own, playoff style, like the FCS. And so it's gonna be it's that constant conversation. We're gonna have it every single year as long as it exists, of the G5 being included altogether, of top 5 conference champions, and that slight minuscule, if 0% chance of there being 2 G5s. That's, I'm with you there. That's never ever going to happen, especially with who owns the playoff and what else they own, aka the SEC and the ACC. Believe it or not, as much as they get shit on by the committee, but they would rather die than put in 2 G5s over a 3-loss SEC team. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked to see Mississippi State sneak in before. I could see Mississippi State sneak in before a second conference champion out of the G5, because they have so many quality lessons. So, I mean, it's one of those things that's going to be constantly brought up, and us being advocates for G5, it's going to be hard to see. And, we're trying to make it so that we give them that equal playing ground. And sometimes it could turn out to where they go into that playoff and they just get absolutely destroyed. But you know what? They earned that spot.
Tennessee did too last year.
Exactly. I mean, there's plenty of teams, with the people that love to push the SEC agenda, is like, well, how good did they do last year? Mm-hmm. They didn't do good at all. So
they keep saying, "Oh, well, these lower tier teams just get blown out." The worst blowout, I believe, was Tennessee against Ohio State. So what's that say about you? It is just a lazy excuse of, well, they just can't compete. No, they can. You just choose not to want to. You choose to ignore that. And I think the biggest issue that the committee presented last night was not that they didn't even rank a Group of 5, but they failed to answer any questions about it in the post-show media press conference. They ended their press conference without fielding or answering or explaining the 5th conference champion situation. What they do is that obviously Memphis is ranked, so you must be asking, well, how did they determine them to be the 12th seed? Well, the committee will keep ranking teams until they get back to that next highest ranked champion. But the committee didn't care to share where Memphis was. For all we knew, they could have Memphis as the 40th ranked team, and there's no Group of 5 teams even close to the top 25. Do I think that's the case? Probably not. But it would have been nice to have an insight onto why Memphis was the highest ranked over a JMU, a North Texas, a USF, over those teams, and how far they really are from being ranked. Instead, we just are completely left in the dark, which just helps build to that narrative that ESPN and the committee want to push, of that 5th conference champion spot for the G5 doesn't matter. We should phase them out.
Like, I'm sitting here scrolling through, stats that they say they're using, like strength of schedule, strength of record, and not once do I see Memphis on top of any of that. When it comes to these G5s, it's usually USF. If we're looking at strength of record, I mean, USF is your highest G5 at 24. The next closest being JMU at 30. So, I mean, it's absurd that we didn't even get any sort of explanation whatsoever on why Memphis is there. Like, I'm all for Memphis being there. Don't get me wrong. Like,
yeah, I think they're equally as deserving.
There's G5. Yeah, but like, explain it. Just give us a quick, like, we put them in because of this, or they got the nod over a team like JMU, or they
don't want to talk about the small brand teams. That's why they won't talk about it. It's too important to leave out, but they don't want to spend any time talking about it.
Yeah, they don't want to sit there and be like, well, we have to dedicate 5 minutes to Memphis on why they're in there. Because, like I said, last year they really didn't have to do that with Boise State. They could have, it was kind of self explanatory where Boise State was at when they got where they were. So they didn't really have to do any sort of explanation. And now they do. And they're going to just brush it under the rug and just be like, well, we don't have to explain it yet. So we're not going to. They're just going to, like, oh, let's just throw Memphis in there right now. Because you can't even argue that it's because they're, at the top of their conference, because they're not. Right now, Navy is still first technically in the American, so they're not even top of the conference, and they're sitting there like, because we're trying to decipher how they got into that 12 spot there, and we can't even figure it out. So it's going to be something we're going to watch out for extremely closely here with how they're going to determine that last slot in the conference champion. So I don't know. It's something that's absurd.
It'll be very interesting. And I think another interesting topic here to note that we haven't even touched on is that UVA at that 11th seed, technically they're the 14th ranked team in the country. Memphis and UVA are knocking out Texas and Oklahoma, surprise, surprise, first two out or two SEC teams of being in there, because Virginia's the highest ranked ACC team right now and presumed champion according to these rankings. So it's really interesting to see here how they're measuring it out. And looking at the rest of the rankings here outside of this top 12, we got Utah at 13, UVA at 14, Louisville at 15, Vanderbilt 16, Georgia Tech 17 after their loss, Miami 18, USC 19, Iowa 20, Michigan 21, Missouri 22, Washington 23, Pitt 24, and Tennessee at 25. I think there's just so much wrong with this. UVA and Louisville are being extremely disrespected at 14 and 15 right now, I think. I don't understand why they're behind these two lost teams. I've mentioned, I think Utah's a really good team, but I think you got to have UVA and Louisville over them. And same goes for this Notre Dame, Texas, and Oklahoma cluster they have here. I don't understand how you have these one-loss teams behind all these two-loss teams. I think UVA and Louisville have proven that they're good teams with some quality wins.
And just to go on top of that is we have now figured out that head-to-head only matters for certain teams in this first ranking from them where, they have Bama over Georgia, they have Texas over Oklahoma, but we're going to hark on again, Miami being below Notre Dame. So this only enforces the idea that they consider when you lose to matter rather than the fact that you just lost. So it just goes to show that it's another thing of their weekly results are not going to matter as much. The week ones, the week 2, week 3 sort of losses are not going to play into as much of a factor, even though that's the whole reason the playoff ranking doesn't come out till halfway through the season, is because they try to collect as much data as they can from the previous weeks, but then it seems like they just disregard the first half.
It's really crazy to me because outside of Miami, honestly, they did a pretty good job with the head-to-heads, but for some reason, Miami drops 8 spots below Notre Dame, who they beat head-to-head in a close contest, but I don't understand how you could say they're 8 slots behind Notre Dame. I don't understand the logic behind there. Head-to-head should matter. And, of course, I'm going to bring it up. I cannot believe they have Tennessee. Actually, I fully believe they have Tennessee ranked. It is, to me, the most crazy ranking. Tennessee is what Missouri was last year. They're being used as a ranked win stat for the other SEC teams. In my opinion, you shouldn't ever look at ranked wins or strength of schedule for that matter, because ranked wins, those are arbitrary. They can determine who's a ranked team and therefore who has ranked wins. So, quite frankly, I don't care about the ranked wins because I care about if you beat good teams. You don't need to be ranked to be a good team. They're going to finagle it and help boost the SEC by saying, well, look at all these ranked wins they have. Well, you artificially are inflating them. And strength of schedule to me is completely an artificial metric that only helps schools within the SEC just look better. I don't think it's a valuable metric. Strength of record to me is way more valuable. But Tennessee being ranked with 3 losses ahead of some of these other teams, especially a group of 5 team, to me is just insane. I don't. Tennessee is still the biggest threat to freedom in the world.
It's, as much as I was a Tennessee, ranker for the last however many weeks. I think they've been ranked ever since the season started, but they finally got that drop, like I said they would have in that matchup against Oklahoma. And I'm with you in the sense of like they're gonna do it, aren't they? And they did. And I'm with you in the sense of I think they were doing the same thing with the AP poll early in the season with especially with Notre Dame being 0-2 and they were still ranked at one point. Like they keep these teams ranked so that it goes to show like, they have these losses against ranked teams or they have these wins against ranked teams. And it's very much just to play into their agendas and what they want to try and push. And that's the easiest way to do it is like, we're the ones making up the rankings. So why don't we just rank this team like a Tennessee so that it props up Oklahoma a little more or it props up a Texas a little more because Texas beat Oklahoma, Oklahoma beat Tennessee sort of thing where we can move these teams up purely because they beat each other. So let's just rank them to prop the other team up a little better. Like there's realistically no reason for a Tennessee to be ranked over a G5 or, any other freaking team where it's like
I don't understand.
You have with how some of this is working, a 3-loss Tennessee being in there in the first official rankings for this just goes to show that it's going to be a long, back end stretch of the season here with how some of these teams are going to get ranked because they're going to find a way. If Tennessee wins out, they could be that first team out sort of sense where they're just on the outside somehow. And it's just going to cause so much controversy, especially within our group, where we just think that it's going to be absurd nonetheless. So it's something we'll 100% keep an eye on with each week that goes by, and we'll always be showing ours compared to theirs and how it kind of unfolds here.
It's going to be really interesting. I dread every Tuesday at 8 p.m. now to see what these rankings are going to look like and how they're going to duff them up because clearly our rankings are superior.
It should be us in that room, that war room, making decisions, but we will 100% keep doing ours and keep preaching ours that it's better than theirs, and they should 100% use ours over the committee because they're just a bunch of old people in a room that just want to push what they want to push.
Agreed. I look forward to next week's episode when we get to dive into this again. But looking ahead to this coming week, and the games that matter most, of course, are JMU and Tulane's. Jumping right into JMU here. Huge game on the road in Huntington against Marshall. Playing there is just always so dangerous. It is a very great fan base. They always come to disrupt. It's a big game for JMU that obviously, like we said, that last playoff spot for the 5th highest ranked champion is up for grabs, and JMU is right in the thick of it. Tulane's loss last week to UTSA was a huge help to us, and now for the rest of the season, I will be a huge Tulane fan. But looking at this game for JMU, I think JMU has looked like the best group of 5 team over the last couple weeks here. They're playing the most consistent football on defense. They have not allowed a point in the second half in their last 4 games and are outscoring teams 90-0 in the second half of all these games. It's been an incredible stretch of defense. The offense seems to have really come to life these last 2 weeks against ODU and Texas Tech. We need Alonzo Barnett to continue to play out of his freaking mind and for Wayne Knight to pound the rock every chance he gets. Defensively, this pass rush remains critical for us to help out the secondary, prevent these big pass plays, and the goal is to go 1-0 each and every week and to forget the rat poison that comes with outside noise.
Yeah, it's going to be massive for JMU how they finish this season, especially with how we now know how the committee is thinking. So they're going to have to go out there every single week and prove themselves to do it, unlike what Tulane did this past week, where they just shot themselves in the foot, shot themselves in the other foot, and then shot themselves in the head. It was not a great showing. For some reason, UTSA just has voodoo magic when they play home in the conference, and they just ball out like they're prime Alabama with Nick Saban. But nonetheless, they now have a quick turnaround against a top AAC, team in Memphis, where they are traveling to Memphis in a Friday night game that could very much shape up how the American's gonna play out here. With if Memphis wins, you could almost kind of guarantee their shot at the conference title game and possibly to host it. But Tulane is looking to bounce back and play spoiler, which they are still very much. They still could very much be in the race for the American. They only have the one conference loss, so they could play spoiler, win out, and they could find their way in. What I'm looking for here is possibly quarterback controversy for Tulane, where Retzloff did not look great in that UTSA game. 2 interceptions. Had only thrown one all season before, and then just goes and throws 2 just terrible ones, in my opinion. He had his worst completion percentage in his career, I believe. And he got benched for Brendan Sullivan, who came in and, played a somewhat decent game, albeit, they were kind of just playing for pride at that point because they were already down 20+. And he did go in, lead a touchdown drive. So, there is the conversation around that because before Retzloff did come into the season, Sullivan was supposed to be the starter and then ended up getting hurt in camp, and then Retzloff came in and took the job. So there's a possibility that it could be another controversy going in here with who's going to get the start. Do they possibly share some snaps? They've done it before in the season where they have played both of them in certain packages.
From personal experience, Sullivan, you don't want to do that.
No, I do not want to see no 50-50 like JMU did, because we all saw that did not work out pretty well for them, and since they have decided on the one, it's worked out pretty well. So I think they just need to pick one, go with it, and if it turns into another bench-worthy game, then you bench them, bring in the other guys, sort of stuff. But I haven't seen anything about a quarterback change yet, so we'll have to wait and see what it's looking like. But another massive thing is a defensive bounce back, because they got belt to ass from UTSA, where Owen McCown had a day against them. He just had lights out on them. I mean, the trick plays, the deep shots, every sort of thing you could imagine, UTSA pulled it off. And it was very, surprising to see that with how easy they made it look, because, if there's one thing that that Tulane has done pretty well is their defensive side of the ball is when they need to get a stop, they usually end up getting a stop, and they could not seem to get the defense off the field that game, and it was just terrible to see, tiring to see. The defense, I'm sure, is going to look back on that film and want to just destroy it with anything possible, because I know they're going to be like, that was by far the worst game they have played all season. And that's another thing you look for, with that big loss being in the conference and, completely taking them out of the limelight, is play for some pride here. Show them that you're a legit team. Take the noise away, and just go out there and play some freaking football, because it just seemed like that it just got all to them. And, they preach every single week that they try to, exactly like you said, go 1-0 and forget the rat poison. John Sumrall has always, tweeted on Twitter, something about the rat poison and everything. And it just seemed like it got to them that past week. And especially now with some of these head coach openings, especially being Auburn being the big one, of him possibly going home. And Tulane has done nothing to show that they are trying their hardest to keep him. So, it could be one of those things where right now he's playing, this could be sort of tryouts for Sumrall. Can he, coach a good game here in these last couple games, and possibly, get himself a big contract at a massive SEC school, or just a bigger school in general. So he's my quote unquote key player for this game is John Sumrall is coach a complete game from start to finish. It seems like when one side of the ball is doing well, the other can't keep up, and then just vice versa sort of thing. And it just seems like they haven't connected at all on both sides. So that's going to be a massive thing. And I think another massive thing is going to be controlling Memphis quarterback Brendan Lewis. The dude has been balling out these past couple weeks and has brought life to Memphis after that really bad loss to UAB. And he's doing it in the air and on the ground. He's got 1,869 passing yards with 562 rushing yards to add 8 touchdowns on top of that. So that dude is a dual threat, and he is going to look to just continue his winning ways against Tulane here. And, can Tulane get that revenge for last season again, where Memphis came to New Orleans and beat us to knock us out, not out of the conference championship game, but prevented us from hosting. So that was that was the start of the late season collapse there. So look for them to exact some form of revenge, but it's going to be a good one to watch here and could absolutely, shape up the rest of the American conference race.
I hope they do. I'm a big Tulane fan against Memphis this week. Would definitely help JMU out. But looking ahead here to our must-watch games of the week. We got a good slate this weekend here. A lot of primetime games to go over. Starting us off with Oregon at Iowa here. A big matchup in the Big 12. We're going to see if Iowa's defense can keep holding the line against Oregon's offense, or if Iowa can get out of that one-dimensional funk on offense and really start to light up the scoreboard.
Quick correction, it's Big 10, not Big 12.
Thank you for that.
But no, this is one of those things where it's almost like that the just two like almost should be like powerhouses of Iowa's defensive sort of football against Oregon's offensive football, which we haven't seen much of lately. It seems like they've staggered a little bit since that Indiana loss, and I don't know if it's because of that loss they haven't sort of figured out how to get back into that groove yet, or just something's not clicking right now. But if Oregon really needs to find their footing again and be explosive like they can be, that we all know they can be, and it's gonna really come down to Iowa's defense. That's like their bread and butter is their defense, and are they able to contain Dante Moore and the weapons that he has? If they can get that, it's gonna play in their favor. Being at home is always going to help. Iowa's kind of a wagon right now. They're playing really good football. They're doing very good. They're getting ranked. So they're sneaking their way into that Big Ten conversation. So this is going to be a massive one for that Big Ten race. It's looking more and more likely it's going to be an Indiana Ohio State sort of thing. But you could see a third, fourth Big Ten team sort of sneak into that playoff there.
Mm-hmm. Oregon and Iowa are not out of the Big Ten championship aspirations. Iowa has 2 losses, but one came to Iowa State, a Big 12 team. So there's reason to believe that they could continue to be this wagon that they've been on and figure things out here and potentially cause some friction within the Big Ten championship game. It's going to be really interesting, and I think you mentioned it, is can Oregon wake up and look like the team that everyone has predicted them to be? I think they might be a little overrated by the dummies, surprisingly, right now. I think the committee actually might have ranked them a little bit more accurately. But they didn't look good against Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, so want to see quarterback Dante Moore really open up that arm and get this offense rolling. While on the flip side, Iowa's quarterback Mark Gronowski, who we've talked about several times, can he continue to be a difference maker for him? He's not going to light up the scoreboard with his arm, but his legs are always dangerous, and that the dynamic he brings is always hard to control. So it's going to be a really interesting game for 2 teams that one's usually known for offense, one's usually known for defense. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out.
It's going to be another one of those games where I think that the turnover battle could absolutely decide this game with how each team plays. it's gonna, if Iowa can get that one critical turnover, it could absolutely just shape the whole game in their favor. Take away an Oregon possession or two, it could help. But if Oregon can go on that flip side, gain a couple extra possessions and actually score on them like they know they can and will, more than likely. I mean, it's, you never know, but if Oregon can find their footing and sort of stuff, and get ahead quick and make Iowa play from behind, it could get out of hand. But with all this being said, who you got in this big matchup?
I'm rolling with the Ducks. I think that they are going to get the job done. I just think they're a better team than Iowa. Iowa being at home does bring me a little bit of worry, but Oregon, I think their talent is just going to be too much. I think Dante Moore is going to outduel Gronowski, and Iowa's just not going to be able to keep up with them.
I'm with you there. I think the Ducks take this. I think it could be, like I said, I think if Oregon gets out to an early lead, I think it could get somewhat ugly. But I still think Iowa's a good team. I think they will hold their ground for a good part. They could use that crowd energy to their advantage at the start. Make Oregon, kind of falter out of the gates. But I think Oregon's got enough from top to bottom to go in there, put a stamp on it, and keep themselves in that Big Ten race there. So I'll take Oregon.
Great minds think alike. Looking ahead to our next matchup here, big SEC showdown. Texas A&M heading to Missouri, which used to be an old Big 12 matchup, but now both of these teams have sailed ship in the SEC. Can A&M finally prove that this is their year? They're sitting at number 3 in the country, undefeated, haven't been in this position in our lifetime. Can they keep it together, or are they going to crumble on the road against Mizzou?
This is a massive one for Texas A&M, I believe, because like you had said, this is their chance to prove it's not just a flunk, and it's not just, all up in the air, and that this could actually be their year. Like you said, we've never seen it. They're probably one of the most infamous, 8-4 teams ever. They usually go 8-4 every single year, somehow, some way, shape, or form. Still could be possible this year, but we'll see. But this is massive for Texas A&M, and this is also massive for Missouri to get a bounce back game at home. Can they, kind of get their footing right again and get back into the picture for the SEC and just a ranking in general? They are one of those teams that have been, kind of hit or miss this entire season. They don't have their quarterback anymore, which is always going to hurt. But they have a chance to, show that they can still do it. They still can compete. But what's going to be a big factor for me is Marcel Reed, of course. That dude he has been balling out, and if I'll give Will one thing, he's been a Marcel Reed preacher this entire year, and even before the season started, and he's been kind of right on it for once. Where Marcel Reed is playing very good football, he's playing pretty lights out. Even in some of their closer games, he's still putting up good numbers. And he's showing that he can lead this team, and I think their entire season is going to fall on Marcel Reed, and if he can continue to play this way.
He has been electric for the Aggies. There's no doubt about it. And you mentioned it, Missouri's going to be playing with their backup quarterback. True freshman Matt Zollers will be replacing Bo Pribula. Going to be really interesting to see. I think this is a game, and we talked about it with Tulane and JMU, but this is a game that has a lot of rat poison for A&M. They're ranked number 3. They're heading to a team with a backup quarterback. This game, to me, just reads trap game, classic A&M collapse when they have the world in their hand.
I 100% could see it. I mean, it's the trap games, especially later in the season against the Missouri team that we know is capable of playing good football. But again, that backup quarterback coming in, that label of, A&M should win this game. They're doing really good this year in the conference and just overall. But yeah, I'm with you there where I see this being like a screaming trap game of, Missouri's like, everyone's writing us off. No one wants us to be here. or no one thinks we should be here, and A&M's coming in here thinking they're the latest and greatest, and they're playing like they are, but can they keep it up? And it's gonna be crazy because I could definitely see this being a lot closer than it should be.
I think this is going to turn into an old-fashioned slugfest with either team having a puncher's chance. With that being said, Tony, who's your puncher in this one?
I think I'm going to go with the Aggies here. I think their punches are going to be a little harder and just, put Missouri down onto the mat. I'm not going to say it's going to be ugly. I'm not going to say that Texas A&M is going to go in there and roll them, but I think they do end up winning by possibly 2 possessions. I think they just have the way they're playing right now, and they're just on fire. They're going to just continue that. It seems like they just cannot be stopped. Le'Veon Moss is finally, getting a good rhythm going on the ground, and that helps open up the pass game for one of the best names in the game, Concepcion. That dude is still balling out, and just every time I tend to look at an A&M game, the dude catches a 50-yard touchdown. So we'll see, but I think Texas A&M gets the job done on the road.
I would love to take Mizzou here. I think if Bo Pribula was playing, I would be rolling with the Tigers. But I just can't trust a freshman quarterback playing against A&M. I do think that this is going to be a one-possession game. I think it's going to be close, but I think the Aggies are going to pull it out. They're going to come out on top for the reasons you just stated. I think Marcel Reed is just that guy right now.
Yeah, it's hard to go against Marcel Reed, but it's just going to be one of those games that, like you said, we said it's a possible trap game, so we'll have to keep an eye out for it. But another big matchup we got going on here, like we had mentioned earlier, is our Navy midshipmen traveling to South Bend to go to Notre Dame. This is Notre Dame's chance, in our opinion, to send a message. Are they able to send a message and be like, we're stomping out Navy, we're stomping out the rest of our competition. We very much have to be considered. If you don't consider us, you're stupid. But as much as I don't like Notre Dame, and I think they're more of a brand. With them being independent, they have to win every game, pretty handedly, in my opinion, to really kind of climb up the rankings right now with those ahead of them, having that chance to have that conference championship game under their belt. So this is going to be pretty massive for Notre Dame, but it's also extremely massive for Navy. They have their first loss of the season to North Texas. And we all I think just about everybody saw that one coming, but they didn't really want to say it, seeing as how Navy was undefeated. But they did have the worst schedule in the nation. So going against their first real competition, we kind of saw what they were. But this is their chance to take that quality lesson from North Texas and apply it to Notre Dame.
I think Navy has been written off by everyone after that loss, and I think that makes a very dangerous team, especially an academy team, running the triple option, running the ball. Everyone's already written Navy off, so they have nothing to lose, while Notre Dame has everything to lose. They struggled last week against a really bad Boston College team. Their best 2 teams that they're going to end up facing on their schedule is USC and Pitt. If they can beat both those teams, obviously the committee already has them top 10 for some ungodknown reason. Even in our rankings, if Notre Dame wins out, they have a chance to make the playoff, in my opinion. However, they really need to hammer home that message against Navy here. They can't play with their food, so to speak. And they have to just have a dominant win. It cannot be close for me to really consider them an upper echelon team. And from a Navy side, they can spoil Notre Dame's college football playoff bid and then also continue to play spoiler next week when they play Memphis and the other AAC teams. Because even though they lost to North Texas, if they can beat Notre Dame, all of a sudden Navy's probably the favorite in the committee's eyes as the best group of 5 team. So it's a huge game for them. They're going to have to slow down CJ Carr, who, in my opinion, as a freshman quarterback, he's a Heisman dark horse. 66.5% completion percentage, over 2,000 passing yards, 16 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He has played really great for Notre Dame, and it's helped that he's had Jeremiah Love still being that dog in his backfield, helping him with that run game.
Yeah, we've seen, CJ Carr and Jeremiah Love just absolutely come to life recently. Jeremiah Love, he kind of started the season a little slow, was still kind of lingering on an injury, but since then has just blown up and turned into the running back that we all thought he was going to be. I had him as a Heisman contender at the beginning of the season, and he's finally playing like one, and which is good to see because I love me some running back play. I love people that can run the rock. So I like seeing, these good running backs actually perform like they should. But CJ Carr, I'm with you there. Being a freshman, this dude is absolutely balling right now. It seems like everything is going his way. And it's going to be very tough for Navy to put a cap on that because having to control him while also worrying about Jeremiah Love is just two very dangerous weapons there for them to try and consider. And, if Navy can do what they're supposed to do in the sense of control that clock and make sure that Notre Dame does not have a lot of time when they do have the ball, it could, end up helping them a little bit, but it could also just end up biting them in the butt because you never know. Notre Dame is very capable, especially with Jeremiah Love, of scoring extremely quick. Jeremiah Love could easily break off a 90-yard touchdown like we saw in the playoff last year. And just any sense of that dude can just break off any sort of long-distance run, and good luck catching him. So it's going to be very tough for Navy to do this, but I think they're going to give themselves a fighting chance. Like you said, everyone's writing them off. They have nothing to lose, and Notre Dame has everything to lose. So
it will be a slugfest in the trenches. It always is. Notre Dame has a great O-line. Navy's got some real troopers down there. After all this talk, though, who are you riding with, Tony?
I'm gonna have to go with Notre Dame. I just think they're just riding too high of a high right now. Navy's gonna be faltering after that loss, and it being at Notre Dame is also gonna make it 100% harder for Navy. They got a great crowd there, so it's going to be tough for them. I think Jeremiah Love is just going to absolutely control that game and make CJ Carr's life a whole lot easier. So I think Notre Dame wins this one pretty handedly.
Last week I went with my heart and picked Navy against North Texas because that would have helped JMU the most, and it bit me in the ass, so I'm going to go with my head here, and I'm going to agree with you on Notre Dame winning this one handedly. I just think Navy's not going to be able to keep up with them. Notre Dame is a much better team. Unfortunately, Navy was riding the fraud allegations of undefeated record from us, being ranked high because of that 0, and I think the wheels are going to come off here against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's going to be able to get it done. So that's 3 in a row that we've agreed on.
Very, very rare for us to keep agreeing like this, but it is what it is. When you got some games like this, it's almost too obvious, and sometimes that bites us in the butt. So, but one game that's maybe not as obvious as these is a big ACC matchup here with Wake Forest traveling to Charlottesville to play UVA.
This is a spot where a lot of people said maybe College Game Day should have gone. They're obviously going to BYU at Texas Tech, which we'll talk about here in a second. But fun fact, Game Day has never been to Illinois, Maryland, Rutgers, SMU, Syracuse, or UVA. So those are the Power 4 teams they've never visited. UVA might not get another chance like they are this season. I hope they don't get it from a personal perspective, but this would have been a really good one to go to. Wake Forest is a underrated team, in my opinion. They just beat SMU. They did just get their teeth kicked in the game after that, but Wake Forest, I think, is a very talented team that can present some unique issues for UVA.
Yeah, Wake Forest was, a team that we had kind of on our radar here, that we thought was potentially, going to get a number next to their name and, look a little good, but then they go and get just stomped out by Florida State. So it kind of really pumped the brakes on that one. But I still think they got a good team. Before the Florida State loss, their only losses were to NC State, who we have seen is somehow playing spoiler and still a pretty decent team there.
Any given
And then their only
Saturday.
other loss, yeah, and their only other loss was to Georgia Tech. So and they lost to Georgia Tech by 1, and it was
In a game they
controversial.
should have won.
So
They
exactly.
actually should
So
have won that game, and they were robbed by those refs outright. It's not even well, they could have won it. No, they had that game won, and it was stolen from them straight up. So
yeah, it's 100%. They're still a very good team, but UVA is still a very good team. But we got to see the UVA of the earlier season where they were solid. They were playing really good, sound football, and seems like ever since that Louisville win, it's just kind of been squeaking by, kind of finding ways to eke games out. The UNC game winning by an inch basically in overtime. And stuff like that, like that's not gonna fly. Come this late season, and they got to find a way to go back to how they were, where there was no doubt about it that they were. They would go in and they would be like, all right, yeah, they're a good team. We got to look out for them. So I think this is going to be a pretty massive test for UVA here to see where they're at and their standing. And if they lose, it's going to throw a wrench in the ACC and the playoff picture altogether. So it's going to be a tough one to decide here.
I think them getting back on the right page and waking up is going to start with UVA quarterback Chandler Morris. He's played very well for them, over 2,000 yards, 12 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. But the offense has definitely cooled off the past couple of weeks against Washington State and UNC. They did not look up to the task. So look for him to extend plays and to make things happen downfield. That's when UVA is best. I think that it all is going to start with him. So I'm looking for him to be that spark plug for UVA here.
Yeah, they really need Chandler Morris to take a step up and really just like ball out here, go out there, make no mistakes. So it's going to come down to him. I think they're also going to need to establish a really good run game and just kind of ease themselves, get in a good rhythm, set themselves up for success, hold on to the ball when they need to hold on to the ball and that sort of sense. But it's going to be a good one here. And it's going to be a real tough one here. So after all this, who do you got in Charlottesville?
Oh, man, this is a tough one. I do think UVA is just the more talented team. But I'm going to drink the haterade for this one, and I'm going to ride with the Wake Forest Demon Deacons here. I think they're going to get the job done. It's going to be a really close one, but I think UVA's sluggish performances are going to catch up to him here, and Wake Forest is going to get the upset they should have had earlier in the season against Georgia Tech.
I like where your head's at. I like the upsets, especially late into the season. The upsets mean that much more. And, I think I'm going to have to agree with you here. I want to take the Demon Deacons here. I think that they are going to go in there and just throw a wrench into everything UVA has worked for and just kind of derail that train in Charlottesville. And, like you said, they deserved that upset against Georgia Tech, and they didn't get it. So I think this is where they get their retribution. I think they're going to show that Florida State game was just a one-off and get themselves back on the right track here. And I think they beat the Cavaliers.
Wow. I did not expect you to pick Wake Forest there. So that might be a record for how many games we've agreed with in a row here. And for the record,
I was gonna try and pick opposite there, but I was gonna go Wake Forest, and then you said it, so I had to stick with it. As much as I want to pick UVA to almost go opposite, I can't. I don't want to pick against Wake Forest here. I think they have enough to get it done.
I respect it. And for the record, we do not discuss our picks before the program here. We find out who each other are picking live, just like the rest of you. So this is not pre-planned, just coincidence.
It'll make my job easier making the weekly picks graphic.
Yeah, that is true. And looking ahead at our fifth out of 6 games here, LSU traveling to Alabama. This maybe from the outside doesn't look like a great game here, but it's one that I wanted to talk about as teams I think are the most dangerous after firing a head coach. Plus, LSU has had a bye week to work with their new coaching staff. From all the reports that we saw, if you want to find out a little bit more, watch our previous episode where we discussed the LSU firing. The team really did not respond well to Brian Kelly. Practices have been more lively. Things seem to be on the up and up. Obviously, that's what reports are always going to say after a coach firing. But I think LSU is always a dangerous opponent for Alabama and are going to present a big challenge for the Tide here. Interested to see how this one plays out.
I'm 100% with you where it seems like this season, if you want to get a good win, you fire your coach. And we could 100% see that here with LSU traveling to Alabama where, they, like you said, they had that bye week. So they had a chance to kind of mull it over like, okay, he's gone. This is what we're going to do now. And, from what it seemed like is a lot of people were not bought into the Brian Kelly, way. And it kind of showed on the field. And, maybe we see some players being a little more free and creative in the sense of how they want to do things. And it's very possible. And I think this I'm going to say this has trap game written all over it. Even though Alabama is at home, this is an LSU team that, again, really has nothing to lose here. Playing with an interim head coach, it could be kind of players almost playing for their position, playing for tape to possibly hit the portal and stuff like that. So, people might want to try and, everyone wants to always do their best, but they might put in that little extra effort because it's like, you know what? Let's play spoiler.
Audition.
Let's make Alabama's life, let's make Alabama's life a living hell. Why not? It would be something that just makes their season all worth it, and it would just be like, this is awesome. As bad as this season has gone for LSU standards, if they can etch out this win here on the road, it would just make all the players, all the coaching staff, everyone happy on all fronts because it's like, no matter how bad it's been going for LSU, if they can find a way to win this, it's just going to be like, well, this season was worth it. We ruined Alabama's season possibly, so it would be fun, but it's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot closer than most people think.
I think it's really interesting to have that perspective of just because your season is kind of on the downs doesn't mean it's not going to be a remembered season if you can pull off this upset. And hopefully for a Bama perspective that they can keep rolling and they don't turn into that team we saw just play so inconsistently last year, kept them out of the playoff, deservingly so. And I think that starts with Ty Simpson, who I think he's the truth. He's my Heisman favorite right now. Over 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, 1 interception. Kid's playing out of his mind, and he deserves the respect that he's getting, if not more. And he has just been lights out for the Tide.
Absolutely. After that FSU game, it was everyone with the talks of Ty Simpson's not ready. He's not built for this yet. And those conversations are gone. I mean, this dude is balling out insane. It's absurd. I'm with you. I think he's the Heisman favorite in my eyes. I don't understand how Julian Sain is over him on some of the books. To me, it has to be Ty Simpson. The dude is just playing lights out with over 2,100 yards, 20 touchdowns, and only 1 interception so far. This far into the season, having 1 interception just means that you are smart with the ball. It could be they're setting him up for success with easy plays, but, he's also – they're throwing the ball downfield. They have the weapons capable of it. So he's just being very smart, and he's good with the football, and it's really helping Alabama on the offensive side. And, they still have a really good defense. So when you're all – they're playing complementary football right now where both sides are doing their job when they need to do it, and it's just showing that they are still very much a good team. They might have faltered week 1, but they took that as a quality lesson and have learned from it and have not looked back once and have just balled out ever since. So it's going to be very tough for LSU to go in there and do what I have been saying where, they have a chance to play spoiler, but it's going to be very, very tough for them to do that.
I think if there's a team up for it, it could be LSU. They have all the talent in the world. I think they've just lacked camaraderie and coaching. So there's a chance that they come out as a reinvigorated team and punch Alabama in the mouth like we saw several teams do, but Alabama respond to. So, Tony, who do you like in this one?
I really my heart and my mind are telling me two different things, but I'm gonna go with logic here and go Alabama. I just think that it's just going way too good for them right now, and they are playing for everything right now. They want to try and get that, try to get that bye and move up, solidify themselves, get in, guarantee that conference championship game. But Ty Simpson is just playing lights out, and I think LSU keeps it close. I think it ends up being a lot closer than we might anticipate, but I think Alabama just pulls away just at the end.
The Tides are rolling right now, and they're hard to beat, and it's hard to disagree with you. But when you're built like I am not afraid to disagree, and I'm gonna go with the LSU Tigers. Go Tigers! And they're going to get this upset done. This team, I think, is going to come out and hit Bama in the mouth. And they're going to play with that chip on their shoulder. They truly have nothing to lose. I know we talked about that with Navy, but LSU even more so. And I think for the exact reason you said, things are going really well for Bama. I think they're going too well. And I think they need this lesson in their life. And I think LSU is going to provide it for them.
Yeah, I mean, My heart was telling me LSU, but I went with logic. But you could see a little complacency from Bama. They could go in there thinking like, oh, this LSU team might be, disoriented from everything that's been going on with all the headlines and the coach being out and whatnot. But that could play into LSU's advantage there. So I like where your head's at, and I almost picked LSU, but I thought you were gonna, I was just like, I don't know, like I don't want to pick the same one again, but. It's going to be a great game there, I think. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game regardless, so I'm looking forward to seeing how that goes. But I think probably this is the game that everyone is looking forward to, is my game of the week. I think most people's game of the week is BYU going to Texas Tech in a massive Big 12 showdown. And the most surprising part is back-to-back Big 12 college game days. Who would have thought? I mean... We're sitting here bashing them almost every single week about not sitting here bashing them about constant SEC and every single one they've gone to, and we get back-to-back Big 12. It's like,
they heard us
is there a
talking.
camera somewhere in here? Like, are they listening to us? Like, and so we got some influence now, is what I'm hearing. So I'm glad that they're giving these teams the limelight that they absolutely deserve, and not just going to SEC slop every week. Especially this game, because it's just huge implications on
it's 7 versus 8 in the
where the
playoff
Big 12
poll.
could fall. Exactly, I was just about to mention that it's massive seeding wise as well. So this could play into we've seen the Big 12 disrespect constantly, but they gave them their flowers in the committee this week a little bit. I think they could BYU should be a little higher, obviously, but
I agree. It was interesting. The committee had only 3 Big 12 teams ranked, 7, 8, and 13. 13 being Utah. Where the ACC had 5 teams ranked, but none higher than 14. So it's almost they're going 2 different routes, where the ACC, they have some quality teams, but none that are really good, where the Big 12 only has a few really good teams, and everyone else is kind of cheeks in their eyes. And because of that, this is why this game's so important, where is the loser going to fall in the rankings? If it's Texas Tech, I don't know if Texas Tech can make the playoff, because that's just how the committee is going to end up doing it. If it's BYU, does BYU drop out of the top 12, and can they work their way back in? Obviously, they'll still be in contention for the Big 12 championship game, but at an at-large bid, who knows? And I think that's kind of what is being set up for right now, where the loser of this game will only be able to get in through the Big 12 championship and winning that game, where the winner will be a certified top 12 team regardless, as long as they keep winning. So it's going to be interesting. And Texas Tech deserves the respect despite their loss to Arizona State. They've won every other game by at least 20 or more points, which is just absurd. And against Arizona State, they have a backup quarterback. It's, on the road, tough environment.
I'm with you 100%. It's tough for Texas Tech, but in the sense of the loser of this, especially being Texas Tech, if they were to lose, they would 100% be on the outside looking in, and it'd be very hard for them to bounce back. But I think they would still have that good chance there. We've seen that they rank Utah 13, and they have 2 losses, both being conference losses. So if Texas Tech were to lose, get that second conference loss and that second overall loss, it would definitely hurt them a lot more, but I think they have done enough to where they would still very much be in the conversation. They could fall into that first 2 out, first 3 out sort of thing, but they would need a lot to get back in. But in the sense of the winner is almost a lock, and that spot is absolutely correct, I think, where the winner of this game is just going to get a big boost from this, depending on how they win could change it. If it's a walk-off field goal, maybe the loser doesn't get punished as much sort of thing. But, with BYU being on the road, especially for me, I value those road wins, especially at a top game like this. I think it could help BYU more in that sense. Like if they were to go into a Texas Tech team, go in there, get the job done, and win, I think that could give them that much-needed boost, especially in the committee's eyes. And, like we've seen where Texas Tech, like you mentioned, besides the ASU game where they had their backup quarterback, they win every game by 20, at least. So this is the true test for, Texas Tech with their starter back and how things are going. Are they going to just continue that trend of winning 20-plus, or is BYU just going to put a massive stomp to it and show that they are the big dogs of the Big 12? And it could very much be that. And I think it's going to come down to, again, quarterback play. It's always going to be quarterback play, especially with these teams and how they're just both quarterbacks are balling out. So, my boy Bear, love that dude, even though he wears 47.
I love it.
Still love him in the way he's doing it. True freshman, just balling out, leading this BYU team. If he can continue to do what he has been doing all season, you got to look out for this BYU team.
Yeah, Bear Brockenmeyer and the Bear Morton matchup quarterback duel is going to be the must-watch element of this game. I think both of these guys are really freaking good, and it's going to be really good to see how both of these defenses prepare to stop these high-flying offenses, how Texas Tech can respond to Bear Brockenmeyer's dual threat, his escapability from the pocket, and how BYU will match up with these Texas Tech receivers who are going to be running routes all over the place. This is shaping up to not just be the biggest game in the Big 12 this season, but possibility for just game of the year, I truly do think.
It's crazy because I'm sitting here looking at the stats, just kind of box score watching here, but all their season leaders are almost neck and neck in every aspect. So this could be as close as like a 50-50 matchup as you could get. And it's helps. I think it's going to help Texas Tech a lot that it's in Lubbock, so that they'll have that, they'll have that edge. And like I said, when BYU played Utah early in the season, and I thought that BYU being at home gave them that edge. And I think it did end up giving them that edge a little bit where they ended up, beating that Utah team. So, and we've seen how Texas Tech handled that Utah team as well. So it's gonna be a close one here, and I think it's gonna just completely decide the Big 12 at this point. We could see a rematch, in the conference championship game on a neutral ground, which can play a factor, especially in those conference championship games. If you play this team earlier in the season on the road, maybe being at that neutral site helps a little more, but especially in the sense for BYU in this regard, where they are the road team this year. But it's going to be huge. So I don't know. This is like a heartbreaker because like I love both these teams. I want them both to do good because I want that Big 12 respect. But like they got to play each other at some point. So
with that being said, I gotta ask you, Tony, who are you going to go with?
Oh no! I hope both teams have fun. Um, I think I'm gonna have to ride with the team I've been riding with, and that is BYU. I think that they go and they get it done on the road. It's going to be extremely tough. I think it's going to be a very defensive game. I think BYU is very capable of holding down that Texas Tech offense, as best as they can. It might not be enough at the end of the day, but I think that the way that BYU is playing, and they've been consistently playing like this all season, where Texas Tech we've, a little up and down just recently purely because of that quarterback situation. But I think BYU goes on the road and they get it done.
I admire the confidence in BYU. I think they're incredible. This was a game that literally was so much of a toss-up, and I couldn't decide who to pick that I flipped a coin before we recorded. And the coin god spoke to me, and we're riding with the Red Raiders from Texas Tech. The coin spoke to me, but my reasonings are sound. I think that they're going to come out electrified from the game day crowd. I think that that's going to give them that boost, and that home atmosphere is going to be enough to give them the nod over BYU here. I think this is a game that is a must-watch. If you are watching football this weekend, please turn this game on. You will not be disappointed.
Well, unless you have YouTube TV, then you can't. So
yeah, that's also true.
The typical, can't watch half these games because I have freaking YouTube TV, so it's gonna suck. But I will, possibly just say arg and watch some games. But it is what it is. But that's our little cover here for our must-watch games. Let us know which games you are looking forward to, which ones have the biggest implications. Let us know what you think about our rankings. The committee's rankings, what our bracket looks like, what theirs looks like, why ours is so much better than theirs, and that they still don't know what they're doing, despite that being their only job. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Dynasty Dummies.
And
feel
TikTok.
Free to follow our personal and TikTok. We do have TikTok. Follow our personal Twitter accounts as well at Hunter_Shaw5 and at CronyTony20. And we will see you all next week after this great slate of games.
See you all next week.